the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
Oh boy, this shit pretty sad. And the rape people too.
Okay, guys, we are live, waiting now just for the stream to begin. I mean, the stream has begun, but we're waiting for the speakers. Everyone's still getting to their seats, as you can see. Once Karen gets in, I'm going to shut the fuck up and let her talk. And yeah, you guys will have a show on your hands. So we're just waiting for Karen and the people to come, but I didn't want the stream to start too late, so I went ahead and went live. This should be visible on all channels. Let me know if I sound all right and how the visuals are. Camera's a little bit blurry. I think it's an internet thing. So okay. It's not up on Honey Badger Radio. That's weird. Let me oh no, it looks like it is beginning for you guys. Yeah, if you don't see anything yet, well, obviously you should. Not on Twitch. That's weird. It looks like it's working. Are you getting an echo? Yeah, you should see an empty podium. Nothing's begun yet. They're still setting up. You guys are welcome to do super chats if you like, but no one was going to see them. They're doing some sound tests too. All right. Meanwhile, I'm gonna look and see if you guys want to talk. We'll make this an Ask Me Anything while we're waiting. So AMA. AMA just for me though. I can't answer for other people. Joy Jojo says my body is ready. How are you doing, Brian? I am doing well. Thank you for asking, David Eddy. I mean, my feet are all jacked up and my hands are kind of jacked up from the chemotherapy, but I mean, I'm able to walk, and I was just at the dog park with my dog. So good times. Honey Badger Radio, how do you feel about Liana K? I think I think Liana K is overrated and a little bit trash. That's my opinion. I'm not a big fan. I think that she's just somebody who really wants feminism to survive despite all the criticism, but she's also joining in the criticism so that she can have the best feminism, but she still wants feminism. So you should hear a voice in the background. That's Justin Trottier from Cafe. Hey, Brian, what are your thoughts of ketogenic diets for cancer? My wife is really big into that. So yeah, we're actually doing that more or less. Shush. We're going to. Daniel Butchers asks, is cereal soup? Yes, it's soup for breakfast. Have you heard of chrisbeatcancer.com? No, I have not. I'll look at that. Doge medium that scared you the most when you was a chibi. What? I don't know what that... I don't understand that question. What breed of Doge are you exactly? For a while there, I was a Mexican hairless. But now, I don't know. I thought Prim was dueling Aiden. Really? I don't know anything about that. Okay. Honey Badger Radio, is Allison going on the morning kumite? I don't know if it's on the morning kumite, probably, but I know that she's supposed to be talking to Mr. Medicare this weekend, or at least she was asked to. She's probably going to go ahead. Wise Mage Zero gave us $10 Canadian and says, when are you releasing the Karen body pillow on your website? We just need somebody that can do, like, as soon as I'm up and running again, I'll do the artwork for body pillows for all the Badgers if you guys think that's a good idea. I mean, whatever your fetish is. How do you feel about assault rifles? Do you know what an assault rifle is? I was just watching the Doge and Bunny Show video about Liana K. Yeah, I have a lot of criticisms of Liana K. I think that, you know, like I was saying before, she's trying to be the good feminist. But she still believes in feminism, and that means she believes in patriarchy, and that means she believes in women worsting. So I think that people give her a pass. Like V, I like V Monroe, you know, but he gives her a pass. He keeps, like, defending Liana K, and I'm like, why? Because she's not Anna Kasparian crazy? That doesn't mean that she doesn't have bad ideas, and she does. Questions for Doge. If your Uncle Jack helped you off a horse, would you help your Uncle Jack off a horse? Ha ha ha. Yes. Why not? Why wouldn't I do stuff for my uncle? Let me see. Looking for other stuff. You guys are typing a lot. How is the puppy doing? Yeah, Jojo is great. He is an amazing dog. Is there a Puerto Rican breed of dog, Honey Badger Radio? You know what? I need to look that up. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Are you still fully functional down there, Brian? I'm not teasing. I genuinely am unsure. Mostly functional. There are some issues. I won't lie. But I don't want to make that the subject of the show, per se. Let's just say that there's stuff that isn't completely working just yet. But it should hopefully recover. Joey Jojo, I want Prim. Don't we all? When is Mombot going to be a guest? You know what? I'd love to get her on. I never knew that I thought she was nothing more than a Twitter personality that probably wouldn't appear on people's streams. But yeah, I totally talked to Mombot. She's awesome. French Honey Badger, how do you feel about assault bullets? I try to avoid assault bullets because they're high in sodium. So just a pepper bullets is what I prefer. Would the Karen Daki be Futa? Absolutely. Be Kevin Strong. Let me see. I didn't know how to ask, but you're doing an AMA just to pass the time. Brian, did you guys ever post up the video and pics from your Down Under tour? You know what? I think so. We've been posting up stuff. Yeah, the video is kind of blurry. I think it's one of those autofocus cameras. Plus, they look like they're running into some. It's more like the resolution dipped a bit. It was looking really good when I first started this, but I'll message the guy running the camera in just a moment. Serious question: has Liana done porn? She looks familiar in that way. I don't want to know. To be honest, I'm not really into Liana K. I don't find her attractive. Let's see. Especially, never mind. I just don't. I'm not into Liana K. She's not my type. Just knowing what kind of person she is makes her unattractive to me. Let's see here. I'm gonna see if there's a lot of stuff in here. The video is a little bit blurry. If that's the best quality you can get, it'll be fine. No, it can get better. It can be better. I think this is the worst I've seen it, actually. None of the badgers are thick enough IRL. Would you thicken them up for the body pillow? I think I might be thick enough, actually. Ben Klazinga gives us $10 Australian and says, I think you misinterpreted Brett Weinstein. He never claimed women are victims of makeup, just that they have some pressures to use it socially and biologically. Well, you'll have to like take that up with Allison. I think that the idea that women are pressured to do stuff socially is like a feminist argument, and it kind of implies that women don't ever have the choice to just not wear makeup, which is weird because a lot of women that I know, actually most of the women I know, don't wear makeup because they just don't care that much. And yet they remain married, you know, with lots of friends. Like the social pressure is not really an issue for them. So I don't know. I mean, Karen used to wear makeup in her early videos, and she thought she was just like, well, I'll just do it and look nice. But now she doesn't care. She hasn't worn makeup on her videos for years. So this is important. I have to know if she did prawn. No, I don't think that she did. To be honest, I think if you pushed Liana K enough, she'd probably be like maybe even anti-porn. How do you plan to solve the insufferable echo in your live stream's audio? Is there echo right now, Wise Mage Zero? Let me know. Okay. What are the interviews you did with attendees from the event Down Under? Well, they're not all up yet, but we've done quite a few. Oh, Sir Skeptic, I remember you. Hey, man. So we did do an interview with you. It should be going up soon. I think that it's we need to go through it and do the editing and stuff to make it look nice. So the Sato is a Puerto Rican breed. Who knew? What is that? Let me look that up. See what it looks like. She's attractive until she opens her mouth. I didn't say it. No echo, no echo, no echo here. No echo here. Okay. Let me check. I want to see what the Sato looks like. Puerto Rican breed. I never knew that there was... I figured the island was too small. But okay. Sato dog. Images. Oh, they are... So, what? There's a lot of variety in the pictures, so... That's cute, though. It's cute. It's a good-looking dog. Oh, it's a Puerto Rican slang term referring to a mixed breed dog. So, mutt? That's why the pictures are all different. God damn it, guys. Hold on just a moment. They're still setting things up, but pretty soon.
Hi, everybody.
Here we go. I'm going to shut up now.
So we didn't get the best case scenario, and Karen is fine. She's being well attended to, but she's also off to the hospital, I'm afraid. No? Audio is an issue? Then? Okay. Now I hear myself, yes? Okay, so if you didn't hear what I just said, unfortunately, Karen is going off to the hospital to be attended to by medical professionals, and she's fine. She seems to be in fine shape. I wouldn't say great shape, but she's in fine shape, and she's in good hands, so everything is fine. The events tomorrow and Friday, as far as we're aware, are going to proceed as planned. If that changes, we will let ticket holders know in case you have tickets to Thursday or Friday's events. Thursday at York, Friday is at our office at the Canadian Centre for Men and Families. Now, we will reimburse all of you for today's tickets if you have a pay ticket, that is. We're also going to offer you a free ticket either to Thursday or to Friday if you did want to see Karen. Again, Thursday at York, Friday at the Centre for Men and Families, which, if you don't know, is around Carleton and Jarvis. So it's actually right off Ryerson campus, but a block off campus. So again, our apologies. These things unfortunately do happen, and we're very sorry when they do, of course. But we're going to try to do what we can for those of you who came out tonight and wanted to meet Karen. So hopefully you will still get to do that. Now, what I thought we would do, if you want to run off, of course, I'm not going to hold you here, but we thought we would still talk about this subject matter. You did hear, you came to hear Karen, of course, but I think you also came perhaps to hear a little bit about domestic violence in men. We can still have that conversation. There's some people in this room who know a thing or two about this topic. In fact, we're the organization that's about to open the first shelter in Toronto for abused men and families. So got a bit of authority, I think, to comment on the topic ourselves. So it's not going to be the event we promised. And again, we were really sorry about that. But if you want to stick around, we'll probably have a shorter event. We'll talk a little bit about the subject. And actually, as I look around, I notice there's a few interesting people here that can say some really, I think, important things on this subject. So I do hope many of you will stay. But that's, of course, your choice. So I think we'll take maybe a minute for us to kind of regroup and prepare for that. And hopefully many or all of you will stay. And maybe we'll have a bit of a conversation about the subject after my colleagues and I have done a short presentation on it. Hope that's okay for all of you. Okay, so you can decide if you want to stay or not, and you'll see me and my friends back up here in about a minute. Okay, thanks everybody.
Oh, I was not expecting that. That's crazy, man. Karen got sick, and apparently she had to be taken to the hospital. This just happened. I mean, as far as we know, we just talked to her and everything was fine. So let me, I'm going to ask the guy to turn up the volume on the microphone. We'll run the stream for as long as we can anyway. So Karen got really sick. She had to go to the hospital. I guess she's going to speak tomorrow instead. So I'll just set up the stream for tomorrow as well, but I'll leave this up for as long as I can. This is a interesting twist I did not expect. So there you go. Hold on while I try to adjust the volume here, okay?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, hey, I'm also live still because I didn't cancel the stream, so the people can hear us talking. So I just wanted you to know that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we need is that they want to turn up the volume a little bit on the microphone. Justin was coming in lower, a lot lower than I was. So maybe you can like turn up the gain a little bit on the microphone over there, and we'll just do the stream now for as long as we can, even though Karen's not here, because everyone showed up. So
I think she had a walnut reaction or something.
Okay, so allergic reaction. So she should be good by tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, her lips swell up, and no, but it's gonna put her out of commission for tonight. So
yeah.
All right, so it was just an allergic reaction, guys. Nothing serious, but probably still really, really inconvenient. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and they're gonna talk. We'll just do something else. I'll leave the stream going, but if you could turn up the gain a little bit on their microphone, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I need to talk to the guy who's doing that.
Okay.
He's working on it.
Okay, so let's get started. I guess I'll get started. And
all right, I'm gonna leave this call. Okay, sounds good.
A little bit closer down.
All right.
If you choose to. So I'll say a few quick words about the subject matter, and hopefully my colleague Mark will load up the website so I can refer to some statistics. Violence against men, VIO. So the Canadian Association for Equality, about 2.5 years ago or so, put up a billboard ad, and I wanted to maybe start with that because this kind of got the ball rolling. There it is, perfect timing. So we put up this billboard ad just over 2 years ago now, and the billboard ad got a lot of attention. And I remember, I think City News, one of your colleagues, was the first to cover this. In any case, we had 3 of these ads up around the city, and it really sparked, I think, an important debate. We also had a series of events, press conferences, and the like. And since we put up that ad, we've had hundreds of men reach out to us as a result of being victims of domestic violence, and by seeing the ad, realizing that they finally had permission to talk about these experiences, which for many of them they had lived with for many years and had never had the opportunity to get support, to even open up about these experiences. So I remember reading, I think it was in the Huffington Post, an article that really unnerved me, and it said that it was about the billboard ad campaign, and it described the backlash against the campaign and said that the campaign had backfired because it received so much criticism. But of course, to say it backfired, it's a weird thing to say when you don't know actually what the result of the campaign was. And the result of the campaign was actually get hundreds of people out, hundreds of men and families came out to get support because of that billboard ad. So how it backfired, it's probably not the right way to describe it. So it didn't just get hundreds of families out to get support, it also galvanized volunteers, fundraising, and up to the present time, that support has really grown. And now we're, as I said earlier, going to actually open up the first shelter for abused men. And it really started with that billboard ad. So the billboard ad messaging had 2 statements, and only the first statement really got attention. Half of domestic violence victims are men. Now on this website that we created for the campaign, equalitycanada.com/violence against men, we have a lot of facts and figures to back that up, including the Government of Canada's own Statistics Canada general social survey data, which every time they do this survey, I think it's done every decade, the last 30 or 40 years, has found has reached the same conclusions, that half of domestic violence victims are men. So this hasn't sort of just become an issue. We've known about this for the last 3 or 4 decades, at least those of us who read those data reports. So that's very solid information. But the second part I thought was equally important, and it got almost no attention, which is that no shelters are dedicated to men. People seem to really pick at the numbers of men, whether it was, hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands, but the fact that there were precisely 0 shelters, that other really important number, got almost no attention. It's not just shelters, it's also crisis lines, trauma therapists, emergency therapists that are available if you're a victim, other kinds of emergency support services. There's virtually nothing for men. I don't want to say 0, but there's virtually nothing for men, not only in Toronto, but across most of Canada. Since we put that up, there has been 1 shelter that's opened in Winnipeg. So I really want to be as correct as I can be. There's now 1 shelter for male victims of domestic violence. Remember, there's tens of thousands of them. There's 1 shelter. It's in Winnipeg, Manitoba. There's nothing in Ontario. So that's kind of the basic lay of the land. I kind of wanted to present it that way because of the stark disparity between the numbers of victims, the tens of thousands of victims, and the fact that there are 0 shelters and almost no services. So again, equalitycanada.com/violence against men. There's lots of important information about that campaign, and we keep updating that website. So maybe I'll hand it off, Robert. Do you want to talk a little bit about the public policy agenda that we have around trying to change maybe police policies and other kinds of social service policies to support men and families?
Thanks very much, Justin. My name is Robert Stammery. I'm the chair of the board of Canadian Association for Equality, and also the chair of the Public Policy Committee. And we've been working for quite some time to change public policy. Part of that starts with the response that men get when they call in and say, hey, I'm here. You asked me to let you know if I'm a victim of domestic violence. I'm a victim. And the first people that show up are the police. Now, we know that men have a lot of difficulty asking for help. Men don't seek help. Men don't seek advice. Men don't want to be helped. Men don't want to appear as though they're weak. Men don't want to appear as though they don't know. So that's something that we can work on, and we should be working on it. But in the meantime, we have to accept that as a given. So when the police get a call like this, and their response is, "We'll be there in a minute," they show up and they talk in terms that I'm going to let Michael talk about that a little bit later, because Michael has personal experience with this. Michael has a group that he runs with a lot of men who have personal experience with this. So I'm not going to tell you what they say. I'm going to let Michael say that. Why don't you do that now, and then I'll come back.
Hi, can you hear me? Yep. Yes. Okay, good. So my name is Michael Healy, and I am, I guess for this program, I'm one of the faces of men who've experienced domestic violence. I did. And so I want to speak to a little bit about some of what men's experiences are, so you can see that it is real. My personal experience, and a little bit to what Robert was speaking about, is that often men who, when they do seek help, and Robert is very correct, a lot of men are very reluctant to seek help for many reasons. I think maybe there's some socialization as who we are as men, but then there's also many stories out there and experiences of when help was sought in this situation, it didn't go particularly well. Many men that I have spoken to, so just to back up a little bit, I run a peer-led or peer-facilitated group for men who've experienced domestic violence at the Canadian Centre for Men and Families. And we've had probably, I think, about 50 or so men go through the program at this point in time. So I'm familiar with some of their stories. I also travel across the country speaking about this, and I've asked a few of them if I could share their stories. So what I'm about to share are people have given me the permission to do that. But the couple of the key things about men not asking for support, it's very interesting for me as I travel around the country, or as I've been to other places in the country, and a lot of times I'm just telling my story, and after I talk, and it's often to groups of men, after I speak, there's almost always one or two or more men come up to me and tell me, "Oh yeah, that happened to me too, and I've never told anybody about it before, ever." So just starting this conversation, getting it out there, allowing men the space to talk about it is a really important thing. But to go to Robert's point about men and the police, my own personal experience is that I was hit and punched and had things thrown at me, and eventually attacked with a knife. She never actually made it all the way to me. But when I did go to the police, I didn't call them to the house. I actually went to the police to have a conversation with them about it. And when I went to the police, I had to really advocate strongly for myself to get them to take a report. They did not want to take a report. They were really reluctant. And so I had to advocate very, very strongly on my behalf. And the reality is, I think a lot of men are probably not ready to do that advocacy on their own behalf. Then there's the situation, I'll give you, this is probably the most extreme one, or maybe the most extreme one that I've heard. But what happens is when these kinds of things get out there and people hear about it, then when a man is in that situation, he starts thinking, "Oh, I'm not calling the police. No way, this could go wrong." So here's the situation. This was a gentleman who lived with his wife and their young adult daughter. I think she was in her early 20s and going to university. And both wife and daughter had been physically abusing him for some period of time. But on this particular evening, he was at home making a pot of rice. His wife came home and his daughter came home, and whatever it was that happened, there was a disturbance, and they attacked him. And they knocked his bowl of his pot of rice off the stove, and he got splashed with the hot water. They had him down on the floor and punched him and kicked him, two of them, for 2 hours. And they kept him in the kitchen and wouldn't let him out. And he eventually got out, escaped, and he went to the neighbors, called the police from the neighbors. The police came, they interviewed him. They went over to his house and interviewed his wife and daughter. And they came back and arrested him and took him to jail. And so we start thinking about, yeah, just call the police. Well, when we hear about those things, it's hard to do. And so what happens to men overall is, this is my experience from working with men in the group, is they lose their voice. And what I mean by that is they don't want to talk to anybody about it because they've been disbelieved. They've been told that it's not true. I mean, even the response to this was that that's not true, right? That's not true. And so men who are experiencing it were thinking, wow, it's a whole society that doesn't believe me. And it's very hard to come out and have a conversation when a whole society, when you have that perception that a whole society doesn't believe you. So that's our experience around it. We have a group. So if you know anybody that has any males that have experienced domestic violence, have them contact the center. We've got something that may be helpful for them, supportive. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. I asked Michael to come up and talk, partly because he's eloquent, partly because he has a good story, and partly because you can see what a male victim of domestic violence looks like. Does he look like a wimp? Does he look like he could defend himself? What would you say to him if he came to you and said, my little wife, she's beating me up. She threatened me with a knife. You'd look at him and you'd say, really? What have you been smoking? This happens all the time. Police have the same kind of perspective. Social service agencies have the same kind of perspective. And why do they have that? Back in the early 70s, since the early 70s, there's a train of thought that says all men consciously use rape to control all women. Let me say that again. All men consciously use rape to control all women. You don't have to believe that to be true in order to understand what kind of effect that has on society as a whole. Let me add to that. How many people have heard someone talk about a man in unflattering terms? He's a pig. You know, all men, they're pigs, animals. They can't get along without somebody caging them, leashing them. They're just base and vile. Now, that doesn't happen to apply to your father, probably doesn't apply to your kid. But aside from then, every other man is a pig. How do you deal with a society that has those kind of attitudes and frames men in that kind of structure? It's very difficult. It's a huge system to try and turn around. And we're starting. We've been working at this for quite some time, and we're doing it. I happened to listen to Karen last night give her talk, and I'm going to give over a little bit of how she spoke and what she spoke about. We have a branch in Calgary. They put on an event a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about a similar issue, and they invited the whole community, as we have done here as well. And they gave their presentation, and at the end of the presentation, a woman stands up, she takes the microphone and says, I was very impressed with your presentation. And you're saying that there are no women's shelters that take men. There are no men's shelters, but there are also women's shelters, but they don't take men. Well, I'm the director of the local women's shelter, and I can tell you that we take men. And she talked for a while. And what did she say? She said, we've had men go to motels. We've given them vouchers so that they can escape violence to go to motels. In fact, not only did we do that, we did more than that. We gave them an airline ticket to go 200 miles away and stay in a proper shelter, not just in a hotel. And take a look at our website. We'll give you all the stats. So Karen talks about how she went to that website and she looked at the website. Keep in mind, again, all right, men don't seek help. We know that men are really not comfortable in asking for help or looking for advice. So how does this particular shelter encourage men to come? Well, they give stats on how many women have been at the shelter, how many women have had to have emergency care done, and how many women were supported over the last year. This is a women's shelter. Now, think of yourself as a guy. You've gone through a horrendous experience. You're a victim of violence. You've been beaten up by a woman. Are you going to call a woman's shelter and say, I'm a guy, but can you put me up for a little while? And I got my kid. What, do you mind? They don't do a thing to encourage men to call, and yet they think that they're doing a great job. They're sending men away 200 miles from their job, from their family, from any support that they might have. They think they're doing a great job. I want to leave you with one thing here. I'm going to ask you a question. The StatsCan General Social Survey that comes out every 5 years, I think. The latest one was done in 2014, and the stats were compiled in 2016. I'm going to tell you how many women were victims of domestic violence, according to StatsCan, in 2014. I'm sorry, for the 5 years prior to 2014. The number is 342,000 Canadian women. They don't break it down by white, black, Aboriginal. Overall, 342,000. You think the number of men is 20% of that? 50%? Less than 50%? How many people think it's 20% of that? How many people think it's 30%? 50%? Anybody think it's more than 50%? 342,000 women. How many men? 418,000. I'm not good at math, but it's not 50%, and it's not just more than 50%. It's way more than 100%. 80,000 more men than women over that same 5-year period. And I don't know whether men would take shelter space if it was offered to them. And you know why I don't know? Because it's never been offered to them. No man has ever been told, here you go. We've got space for you. We've got space for your family. We're going to give you services. We're going to give you legal help. And we're going to get you back on your feet. No man has ever been told that. We're going to try and change that. We are well on our way to a successful campaign to open a shelter that will give a pilot project a shot at showing that men not only need these shelters, will use them, and will benefit from them. And then I hope we can go back to public policy people, go back to our legislators, who at one point a few years ago said that, yeah, we know men are victims of domestic violence. They comprise about 1%. We have that in an email. 1% of domestic violence victims. How many was that again? What was the number? Anyone remember the number? 418,000. Okay. So we're going to go back, knock on their doors and say, we've got a shelter, it worked, helped a lot of guys, helped a lot of families, helped a lot of kids. Do you want to help them?
That was great. Thank you, Robert. And thanks very much, Michael, as well. The last person I'm going to call up, if she's willing, is Connie, who's a high school student who's done something really unique and really remarkable at her high school. And while she's speaking, I'm going to get Mark. Can you toggle back to the other website?
Hi, I'm Connie. I don't have a script, so I might stutter a lot. I might say things that Robert already said, but I take domestic abuse against men seriously. I have created awareness in my high school in the arts fest. My high school performs like a musical show every semester, and I decided to create a play about domestic abuse against men. And now I'm trying to create more activities giving awareness to domestic abuse against men. Domestic abuse against men is a serious topic. It's really nice that how much we support women. I've been I've been sexually assaulted and I've been helped a lot, and it was really nice. But for people around me who are men or even boys, they cry. Their friends call them pathetic. While when I talk to my friends, they said they always support me, they always give me affection, while other men just tell them man up and stop being weak, which is really depressing because it's really sad that men don't get to have the same affection and emotional help as women have. And domestic abuse for men is way harder than women. Of course, women have it tough, but men also have it tough. Men are blamed for domestic abuse when they're the one getting abused, and it's really horrific that once you speak out, it will backlash and it will hurt you back. And I hope everyone knows that domestic abuse against men is bad, and that we should all come together and do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie. And to your classmates as well for that fabulous production that you put together. Well, the thing we're going to do about it is we're going to open this special space. We're dedicated to this in 2018. This is our national priority to open the first shelter for abused men and families here in Toronto. So I think I'll just sort of conclude by encouraging you to check that out. This is a GoFundMe platform, so it's gofundme.com/abusedmenshelter. And if you scroll down, you'll see lots of photos and stories of men. There's also links to some videos that talk about the experiences of men. Michael's full story is up there, as well as a number of other men who have passed through the doors at the Center for Men and Families, and were willing to give back by sharing their experiences and helping other men to come forward. So we're doing well. Just to give you a quick update, as of the end of the year, we had raised about $215,000. Now that is thanks to a number of philanthropists that initiated this campaign by kicking in some significant amounts, but then a groundswell of support, hundreds of donors that is, essentially matched those funds to add up to the 215,000. And it's an ongoing fundraiser, so you can still give generously to that. Encourage others to do that as well. Just as this is going on, we will also be approaching government agencies, the same agencies that support the violence against women shelters. We're also in talks with them, as well as the city of Toronto. So really, we're hoping all levels of government will get on board with this. But if you have some ideas about fundraising or how to make this initiative move faster, we're looking for volunteers and for support. I think with that, I'm going to thank you for your attention. Again, I know this wasn't the event you came for, but hopefully you still got something out of it. So thanks very much for being here. If there are any questions or any comments, maybe we can have a 15-20-minute conversation. I'd love to hear, what's motivated all of you to come out tonight about this subject. Okay. Yeah, Dory, go ahead. Or do we have any other mics that we could? The question is about halfway houses. Dory, would you come over to this mic? Do you mind? This mic is live, is it? Okay, here we go. Because we're recording this, and I think some folks may be watching online and want to make sure they hear your question, Dory.
I was just thinking about this now. I think there's only 4 halfway houses in Toronto for men coming out of prison. So that's not a lot. So I'm just curious if anyone knows about the differences between women coming out of prison and men, and if there's any initiatives for halfway houses. It's just something to explore. And
I have no idea,
Yeah,
but
so a
maybe the
project,
wisdom
you
of
did
the
a
crowd
project.
will prevail here. Does anybody have any figures on halfway houses?
I can try to find it.
Yes. No, yeah. Good question. Sorry, we couldn't address it very well tonight. Yes.
So, anyone online? They can't. Online.
Do you mind?
Sure.
Thanks.
So, considering we're opening a first shelter for men, why can't we just take all the women's shelters and just label them as domestic violence shelters and have no gender associated with it?
I heard a sigh.
That's actually a terrific idea. It's something that we've been working towards, but the shelters are happy for us to open a shelter. And the reason they're happy for us to open a shelter is because they have a lot of men calling them, as that group in Calgary did, and they have nothing that they can do. They understand the problem is there. They have nowhere to send them. And in the meantime, there's a culture that I think poorly serves women that says women want to be isolated from men when they've gone through this kind of thing. I don't know that that's the case, but I can tell you that if a woman has been abused, presumably by a man, and not always by a man, by the way, because there are, if you think that men don't get a fair shake when they claim to be abused by women, you ought to hear what women who are abused by women get. It's a lot worse for an abused woman who's had a female perpetrator than it is for a man, even though men are poorly treated. Anyway, if a woman has been abused by a man and she's then told, number one, all men are pigs. Number two, come to the shelter and we'll isolate you from all men. She's not going to heal very well, and she's going to have a lot of difficulty forming relationships with other men. So I'm quite sure that it's not a good idea to isolate women from men, but that's the answer to the question. Why aren't we labeling women's shelters as domestic violence shelters and let everybody go there? That's the answer. Michael wants to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to that. I think it's actually a great idea to have both men and women. I think to answer your question as simply as possible is that right now in this jurisdiction, it's political is the answer. So from my own personal experience, when we were looking into the shelter, this is maybe a year ago or so, I did some research that looked like, it wasn't empirical, but I made phone calls to many shelters in North America, in the dozens. And to the degree that I could tell, there was only one shelter anywhere in North America that did have both males and females within the shelter. And when I found that out, I thought they were running two different shelters. But when I found out they were in the same shelter, I had some real surprise because I'd never seen it anywhere before. And kind of asked them, well, what about, because all the other places had told me the issues that having them both in the same shelter, that it would just be untenable. And so I asked them with surprise, I said, well, what are the problems you have? And they said, none. Works perfect. So that's your answer, I guess. I hope that answers, Yeah. From a practical perspective, it seems, at least from the one, that there isn't a barrier, but there are barriers, but it's not practical.
Yeah, I'll just add really quickly to that. There does seem to be an attitude that this is a women's space. This is women helping women, to the point where it might make sense operationally to keep the gender segregated within the shelter, but that doesn't explain why the boards of directors and the volunteers, many of whom never step foot in the actual shelter, are in many cases, not exclusively, but in many cases limited to women only. So I think that speaks to some of the political motivations, at least for many of these facilities. So I hope you got some good information in those answers. Okay, any other questions or comments are fine too. Yes, sir. You know the routine.
I was raped as a child for about 3 years, from the age of 7 till 10. And I did call for help, a women's shelter. And yeah, they told me right away, something really rude. And I just had to let that go for about another 10 years. I think I was 25 when I called up the women's shelter. And then 10 years later, I found out about the gatehouse. And I tried to attend there. But at the gatehouse, it's split. And the police have half of the house for trying to help children who were raped. So it's very difficult for me to walk into those doors. I was wondering about, these shelters, will they help people like myself? I'm still looking for help and I'm 56 to, get a little more, whatever it is. I'm not sure what the word is, because my abuser is dead. He's long gone, but I still have too many memories about what the police said to me when I finally did go forward and try to get help about 5 years ago. The shame and all that came along with it. So I was just wondering, what do you guys do for people, for children who were raped, I guess?
So first of all, thanks very much for sharing that. That couldn't have been easy. I applaud your courage. Indeed, yes. Let me also say the Gatehouse is a close friend of the Center for Men and Families, one of our closest partners. We do a conference every year called Healing Journeys. I'm not sure if I've seen you out at those conferences, but I hope you will attend the one at the end of this year. They're in October, November each year, with the Gatehouse, the Center for Abuse Awareness, which also does a lot of work to support victims. And then we've got a number of trauma counselors and organizations that increasingly are sponsoring the event. This is an event that focuses on all forms of trauma, so sexual abuse, including childhood abuse, domestic violence, and other forms of abuse and trauma. Our services would definitely be available to you. All of our services, by the way, are free of charge. What we do is we do a lot of programs in-house, and then we also have these great partnerships, the Gatehouse being one example among many, where we can refer men to other agencies if we're not, experts and authorities, as nobody can be in every area. At least we know sort of who's available and is male friendly and positive that we can connect you with. So the answer is absolutely. You can call us right now, by the way. The shelter isn't open yet, but we run a social service agency that does already provide a number of support services. So make sure to grab some information out front, okay? You can come talk to me afterwards as well. Okay, good. Is there anything anybody else wants to ask about?
Well, I'm just wondering with respect to the with respect to the funding and access to these facilities, that if unequal treatment is being given, then wouldn't that be a human rights issue? And what about approaching it from a human rights tribunal? I mean, it's simple. If somebody presents himself there as needing that support and they're not able to get it because they're not the right gender, well, that's one of the grounds for discrimination covered by the Human Rights Act, isn't it?
You'd think so, and I think it's worth trying, but at the same time, I know a number of cases have been put forward to the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal relating to discrimination against men, different kinds of discrimination against men, and I don't know that there have been many successes there, because the tribunal has a limited scope in terms of what groups they consider to be which groups they consider it theoretically possible to discriminate against. I don't think men are on that list. So you'd first have the burden to prove that men as a group are, sufferers of discrimination. Then you'd have to make the case in that particular instance. But Robert or somebody else may have some, know more about the case law at the tribunal of any success stories relating to discrimination against men.
I can be pretty brief on this. There are 4 delineated historically disadvantaged groups. You think men and boys are one? No. So it's not to say it shouldn't be attempted, and some people have tried to bring cases of
you know, where the allegation is some kind of discrimination against them on account of their male gender, but it doesn't tend to go very far. So I think, you know, strategically, the approach Cafe is taking is just the approach we've been taking sort of so far is we're going to find a way to get these services off the ground. It would be nice if the government were to do it. It'd be nice to kind of force them to do it through a, you know, a human rights case or a lawsuit of some kind where they were sort of compelled to acknowledge that these issues also affect men and there's an equality problem by not providing it equally to men and women. But that will take many, many years if it ever is successful. So for now, we're just kind of going it alone. We've been pretty successful doing that so far. We've got a thriving, you know, social service agency in Toronto. We just opened one in Ottawa just in the fall. We've raised almost $250,000 now to open the shelter. We're going to go back to government. If they support it, great. We'll open a bigger shelter. We'll support more families. If they don't support it, it's still going to get opened one way or the other. So we've kind of been creative about how we get these things off the ground. We always hope and we always ask for support from governments and foundations and other kinds of actors, but we don't count on it. It's not kind of built into the, it's not a requirement that's built into the planning, because if it were, it just may never happen. But once it does happen, I should say, as Robert was referring to, that actually gives us the opportunity to then go back to government and to other potential funders and say, you see, this is badly needed. It's been making a difference in the lives of hundreds and hundreds of families, and we can show you who those families are because they've benefited from the programs for all these years. So if we can find a way to get these programs off the ground, then we'll have the evidence and the data and the stories where I think it becomes a lot easier to make that case, that compelling case to government and to other potential funders. Yes.
I just wanted to ask that sorry, I don't know if a lawsuit has been filed before against the government or not to ask them to be consistent, at least in how they give out funding, since the empirical evidence does seem to be there. Men are equally victims of, or actually more so victims of domestic violence. Women are less apprehensive about using violence against men. These are things that we already know, so why hasn't a lawsuit been filed, I guess?
Yeah, well, you know, if you know somebody who would qualify and have what they call standing and they want to file a lawsuit, we would, you know, depending on the circumstances, we might very well back them up. But the human rights approach, which is I think the one that might have the best shot at getting somewhere, they're not, the tribunal is just not willing to entertain the notion of men as a protected class. So they have the right apparently to just decide who those groups are.
So isn't there a way to sort of circumvent the human rights tribunal and go around them, because they've sort of become an instrument to just for certain groups that they deem victimized, and isn't there just another way, or is the human rights tribunal the only way that you can bring this into the legal sphere?
There's a fairly successful group, I think, that you might want to be emulating. It's something like at Me Too. Social grassroots organizations and movements are extremely successful. You don't have to go through the litigation process. You don't have to go through a government organization of any kind. You just talk to people. One of our purposes is to educate, to let groups like this and people online now understand what it is that we know to be the case. And with some luck, with a little bit of encouragement, some of those people will start to talk among themselves, and we'll get a movement like At Me Too. And then the Prime Minister may say we'll have to change laws around men, like he's done.
Is the Prime Minister the problem? Maybe? People kind?
I think people, policymakers in general, are the problem. We have to get to them.
Thank you for the question and suggestion. Appreciate it. Yeah, Connie. Sure. Take the mic.
So I have a couple of stories to tell. Some of it may be personal, some of it is from other people. One story was I was talking to someone, having conversation about mental health. We were talking, and she used to work in a mental health place where they support people who are getting abused. And when she asked, "Oh, what do we do with the men then?" They're like, "Oh, just give them number for domestic abuse, um, for them for being abusers." And she's like, "But they're not abusers. What do I do?" So she quit the company, of course, because that's really unfair. And my personal story, my dad has been domestically abused by my mom, and it was really painful for him because he used to be very abusive, and now he toned down. But my mom, instead of taking a forgiving approach, she took a revenge approach, and she always called him names. She tried to ruin my relationship with my dad. She told me and my siblings false information about my dad just to make us hate him. And it was really excruciating because my dad worked very hard for us. He is a Vietnamese person who immigrated here. He came to Canada with no money and being very abusive. But now he is really successful. He makes around $700,000 a year and taking care of my family. Yet my mom, she takes him for granted, and it's really tough for me to accept that. And also my teacher, my grade 7 teacher, we talked about a bit about domestic abuse against men. She told me about her brother. Her brother was really kind. He really loves his daughter, but he lost his daughter in a custody battle, and my teacher was really frustrated because her brother was really caring about his own daughter. And a lot of stories about domestic abuse against men always ends up with a really bad situation. And I hope this will help change the system.
Thank you, Connie. Any questions for Connie, by the way? So Connie's you're in grade 10? 10, I got that right, at Downsview Public School. Secondary school, yes. If you are at her school or at any other school and you want to bring this issue to an assembly, she did it as a play, but there may be other ways of expressing this issue, then they can connect with you, right? Yeah.
I also did a bake sale on for domestic abuse shelter, and also it's a really great solution to help donate.
Thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. Something else you want to say? No. Please. I can sit down then. Are there any questions for Connie before we let her sit back down? Dory?
It's the place. The name of my play was Nowhere to Go. It's uploaded on the Canadian Association for Equality YouTube. Yeah. So if you guys are curious about what the play was, feel free to come to Canadian Association for Equality YouTube, and I'll be around there.
So our YouTube handle is Equality Canada TV. So you just go to youtube.com/Equality Canada TV and look for Nowhere to Go. I think it's one of the last 3 or 4 videos we posted, so it's fresh on the page. Any other questions for this bright young lady? Okay, thank you very much, Connie. Any questions for me? Michael has something? Some last words?
Yeah, I don't know how far we want to get into this about talking about why men aren't able to speak out in socialization.
Well, take 30 seconds and give us the rundown.
I'll do this quickly, but just to help people understand, I guess, some of the social barriers that men face. I have a couple of things. One is in addition to doing work with Canadian Centre for Men and Families, I also do work with the York Region John Howard Society, and I'm working with a program for men who have gone through the PARS program, and I'm really not very good with acronyms, but it's Partner Abuse Assault Response. Thank you. So these are men who have been found guilty in the court system or have pleaded guilty in the court system, one or the other, of domestic abuse or partner assault, and then have graduated out of that program. Oftentimes, attending that program is a requirement of their sentencing. The interesting thing that we're finding is that the men that are in that program, and these are men who have, as I said, convicted, whether they actually committed assault or not is, we won't go there, but approximately 50% of the men in that PARS program are also victims of domestic abuse. They experienced it. And that goes to an issue that in the research around domestic abuse is that about 50% of domestic abuse is what they call bilateral. In other words, both parties are doing it to each other. So even men, and the point that I'm making is even men who go through that PARS program, and in that PARS program, they have to really submit themselves to being a perpetrator. Even many of those men are victims. And so when they go through that program, their victimness is just whitewashed out. Yeah, they're double victimized. Yeah, they're victimized 3 times actually, in the home, in the courts, and then in the program after the courts, in the sentencing. Yeah. And so just another point brought forward to me just now is that York Region Police, who came to the Healing Journeys conference, had a representative there, and were very gracious in listening to the points of view of some of the people. But we checked with them on what they're doing for men, because they were in person. They were saying, yes, we treat men and women equally. When we go to a scene, etc., we try and find out what the problem. But in terms of supports, that may be true or not true, I don't know. But in terms of supports, York Region Police, what they have in terms of support around domestic violence are these 3 brochures right here. And I'll read the titles to you. How to Talk to Men Who Are Abusive. That's that one. How can you identify and help women at risk of abuse? Safety planning for women who are abused. Those are the 3 brochures that the York Region has for people who are experiencing domestic abuse. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
You're fucking a white male!
Speaking about the PARS program, the interesting sort of update on that is that the government does now support PARS programs for female offenders. And those offenders are women who it's acknowledged are committing abuse, not only against women in same-sex relationships, but also against men. So that's being funded, but still no funding for the male victims that logically they must be abusing. I mean, if there's a perpetrator, there's a victim, right? So we've acknowledged the perpetrator side, and we're funding these PARS programs for women, which is good. I'm not knocking that part, but the other half, you scratch your head and wonder, well, what about the victims of those very perpetrators we've just acknowledged exist? Anywho, any other questions or comments? Yes, please.
So I just wanted to know if Canada employs the Duluth model, which, for those of you who don't know, is the police response to domestic violence, where the police come into the home and automatically assume that the male is the perpetrator in the situation, the female is the victim.
So to the best of my knowledge, many agencies do employ that. I don't know that every single one does, but actually, you did some research into this when we were preparing a sort of different approach to treating victims of abuse and trauma. Maybe you're more qualified to comment on that. How prevalent did you see the Duluth model in the various agencies?
It's not ubiquitous. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so to answer that question, I can't speak for all of Canada. And really the way that the response to domestic abuse is deployed is each individual agency. So York Region would have their way of doing it. Toronto Police would have theirs, police services. But in the research that I did in Ontario, it's they do it, but they don't necessarily admit to doing it. So again, when we talk about York Region, they came to our conference. They were really spoke to be open to doing things differently, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, I think if you talk to people who've actually experienced the response, it models the Duluth model quite a bit. So.
Let me say one quick thing. Even if they don't use the name Duluth model, they're borrowing the paradigm, which is a sort of gender-based violence paradigm where all gender-based violence is a manifestation of the patriarchy, a power dynamic at play, which sort of sets up a playing field where men are the default perpetrators and women the default victims. And that's why there's this extra burden if you're a man that you have to prove your case, as Michael had to prove his case to the police. They didn't just take him at his word. The believe all victims mantra apparently doesn't apply if the victim, looks like Michael or is any other man. Sorry? Or male, yes. So again, we can't comment on every jurisdiction, but I will say that we've seen some documents about how the RCMP at the national level sort of trains their officers in this around domestic violence. And we understand that it's a similar training that is then encouraged upon the provincial and municipal policing agencies. And there too, I don't remember if they use Duluth, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but they talk about the power dynamic and the gender-based violence. And again, it's this notion that domestic violence is a manifestation of the patriarchy. That kind of thinking is there. That's at the national level of the RCMP. So it's a really good question she asked. It is very, very ubiquitous. Okay, Catherine, please.
So this isn't a question, it's mostly an update regarding a court case that the Ryerson Men's Issues Awareness Society has been fighting against the Ryerson Student Union. We found out today that the judge ruled in favor of the Ryerson Student Union, so we are not a ratified group. And if we don't fight this verdict or appeal, we will not be ratified at Ryerson. We have tried changing our name to Ryerson Men's Issues Awareness and dropping the part of society to try and get back in the game and get ratified. I'm not sure how much leeway we're gonna have, in all honesty, because I'm the vice president and Sarah Hafizi, the president. We are very swamped as social work students. They work us to the bone for free in our placements. So we're kind of at a standstill, and we're all kind of in a solemn mood. But this kind of highlights the idea that the notion of a toxic patriarchy is prevalent on campus. Men are dropping out of our program like flies. They don't feel welcome, and it's not good because we need that support in the social work realm. And we're hearing a lot of dialogue only from the people who really tote, in my opinion, toxic feminist ideology. And they're still not going for equality, they're going for revenge. So we were dealt a blow, but we're not done fighting. So
I'm sure you're not. Yeah. Yes, thank you for your persistence. It's admirable, and I think eventually we will win this. Let me just. Does everybody know what's going on at Ryerson? Because you might not. So I don't remember when this started. Maybe 3 years ago. Young man, then a student at Ryerson named Kevin Areola, put an application in to create the first Men's Issues Awareness Society at Ryerson. This was to be a campus group, much like the UT MIA here at U of T and the York MIA, which will be hosting tomorrow's event, where you will see Karen Strawn, I really hope. And I hope she's okay. But at Ryerson, we put in this application, and the Ryerson Student Union said, no way. We do not want to have men's health conversations on campus. We do not want to talk about fatherlessness. We do not want to talk about domestic violence. We do not want to talk about really critical life and death, men's health issues. We will not recognize your group. And unlike at U of T and at York, they have a complete monopoly on recognition. So here, we're not recognized by the student union, but we're recognized by the administration. So that's why we're able to book beautiful lecture halls like this one. Same is true at York. But at Ryerson, there is no second option. So if the RSU says no, it really is no. And it's a small campus. So we've been trying to book rooms as an external organization, just paying our way, which is obviously not fair, but to get a conversation started, we're willing to do that. We've got some great philanthropists that will support that. But Ryerson University is so overbooked that is now completely 100% true that if you're not recognized, you cannot have an event like this at Ryerson University right now. So, Karen is not able to get a hall and talk about domestic violence against men. Yet another reason why we probably don't know what the figures are about domestic violence against men, because campuses like Ryerson make it impossible to have this conversation. Now, before the overbooking situation at Ryerson made it impossible for us to book space, we did sort of sneak in an event, I guess, maybe about almost a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. Catherine was there, and Sarah Hafizi, the two young women who are running the group since Kevin has graduated and moved on. And we did an event called The Crisis in Men's Mental Health. And this was just a fabulous event. We had a couple hundred people come out. It was a very popular event on campus. We had a panel. We brought in people from many of the most prominent social service agencies. There was a man who runs something called the Black Daddies Club, which is trying to empower Black fathers in Toronto with respect to engaging in families. We had a young woman who came out from the Addictions Rehab Society to deal with addictions and mental health. We had an individual, Dawn Enns, who runs a men's support group at Native Family and Child. Just kind of a who's who of these great social service agency providers all across Toronto. So that's the kind of event we desperately want to keep doing at Ryerson. And the RSU is saying no to events like that. So I don't know where we're going to go from here, but we're not going to stop fighting. We will certainly be looking at appealing this decision. We will certainly be looking at other creative ways that we can be active on campus. If you are at Ryerson, if you're a student, you know a student, you're a professor, you know a professor, there are certainly ways that you can be a part of whatever next step Catherine is about to tell us we're going to take.
Something I also found out is that the student union that won this past year's election, they were not reelected. And there's new people who might be open to what we're doing. And I do have a friend who's on the council. So something might happen after all, even if the courts say no. So there's some hope there.
That's great news. And I really applaud your continued optimism. It is not easy, believe me, to stay positive in the face of this mountain of opposition. But we at CAFE and these amazing students all over, well, increasingly all over Canada really are making the most of a very difficult situation. I forgot to mention Friday's event is our ode to Ryerson, because we can't actually book a room. We're doing it at our Center for Men and Families, which is conveniently just a block off campus. We've been pushing it, promoting the event quite heavily on campus, and we know we've got quite a number of Ryerson students registered. So yes, if you are connected to the campus, you know students, bring them out Friday. It would be a great opportunity to meet up with you. Will you be there Friday, Catherine? Okay, hopefully you and Sarah, maybe Kevin as well, and you can have a further conversation about our strategy there. Okay, well, this has lasted longer than I expected it to be honest, but that's a good thing. Any final thoughts? Any final questions? Okay, then I'm going to thank you again so much for your graciously accommodating us this evening. Again, if you intend to come out tomorrow or Friday, it's on us. Just tell the person at the door that you were there at the Wednesday event, and they will let you raid in, and we will reimburse you. It may take a few days to process that, but we will reimburse you for today's event if you did pay for it. Thanks very much. Connect with us outside. Sign up to get email updates. You can unsubscribe at any time and grab some brochures to get more informed about these issues and the organizations involved. Have a very nice evening.
Well, guys, thanks for coming on the stream. I'm sorry that Karen didn't end up speaking this time. For those of you who joined us later and don't know what's going on, Karen was supposed to be speaking at this event, but they had to rush her to the hospital because she had a walnut allergic reaction. She will be speaking tomorrow. So we're gonna try. I think that I'm gonna be doing the stream of this tomorrow when she speaks, because she still has to go through with it. So, you know, we'll try to like make up for it. I'm sorry that that happened. It was totally unexpected, and it was like really literally at the last second. I found out after I started the stream. So it was totally unexpected. So but you know what? They pulled some shit together and they got it working anyway. As far as the volume goes, I'm sorry it was a little low. I couldn't really control that. I just requested that the guy who is doing things on his end try to adjust the volume. So if we do another stream tomorrow, I'll set it up, and we'll try to get Karen's actual stream. In the meantime, I'll ask the guy who I'm coordinating this with to maybe, increase the volume some. I had the gain turned up as much as I could for them. That's why when I messed around, it came out so loud, and I apologize for that too. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and take us out. So we'll just look out for the stream a stream like this appearing tomorrow as well, because I really want to hear what Karen has to say. Despite the fact that this still turned out pretty decent. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow night. And I guess that's it. So yeah, thanks for hanging in there with us and watching to see what Justin and his crew managed to pull together. What time? It'll be probably the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, Toronto time, most likely. I won't know for sure. Just be on the lookout for the stream. If you haven't seen it, just hit notification bell so that you know when the streams are up and you'll know what time it is. So otherwise, I guess we're done here, and I'll talk to you guys later.